great to have you here at this Kyle lecture. So what is this, the 28th annual Kyle lecture? That's a pretty cool history, and you can see on the back all of the people who have given these lectures, and that's a really fantastic list of people. We're glad that you're all here. Students, faculty, staff, guests, distinguished guests, you're all distinguished guests. It's really wonderful to have you here tonight. I just want to say a word about a couple of people. First, I'll just mention Richard Kyle. Who is that? Who was that? Especially for our students, you might not know. He was a professor, a faculty member here at Tabor for many years. I had the pleasure of taking U.S. history from him, and as I said, he gave me my first B. and he probably had good reason for that. And he was a fantastic professor, well known for many things. In particular, he led so many international trips. I should know the number off the top of my head, but I don't. And many students went to Europe and to other places with him. He was a fantastic tour guide and organizer of those. So well known for that. He was also well known for being an assistant coach with the football team. He had been a football player. He had actually played professional football for a little while and was well known for that, highly respected for that. Of course, an excellent teacher, but then also he was one of our most revered scholars, I would say. Very wrote books, scholarly articles, and was just really an excellent scholar. And so it's very appropriate that we would have this lecture series in his name. People refer to him as Doc Kyle, and he passed away, I think, 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. He was last at this event maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I remember sitting by him, and it was a joy to have gotten to know him. The other names that I'll mention are Dr. William Lowen and his wife Joy. So Dr. Bill Lowen, some of you may know him. He's been a doctor in Wichita. They established the endowment for this lecture series back in 2004. And so the fact that we were able to have a meal for the faculty is thanks to the Lowens, that they put money in place for that, and what a blessing that they have been. He was on the board for many years, and they have been wonderful supporters of the college. I'll just make a note. He turned 80, I believe, 2 years ago, and retired at 80. He was a doctor until his 80th birthday. Really a fascinating gentleman. So many thanks to them for providing for this lecture. I'm going to now turn it over to Dr. Amy Ratzliff, who is going to do the introduction of our speaker tonight.
Well, it is a great honor for me to be able to introduce our speaker tonight. Dr. Jim Moore was born and raised in Pana, Illinois, where he developed an early passion for education, athletics, and the sciences. He began his academic journey at Pillsbury Baptist Bible College, graduating in 1983 with a multidisciplinary background in Bible, science, and physical education, fields that would shape the trajectory of his career. Following his undergraduate studies, Dr. Moore dedicated 19 years to Calvary Baptist Christian School, where he served as a teacher of science, physical education, while also coaching athletics. During this time, he cultivated a strong commitment to mentoring students, both in the classroom and on the field, integrating faith, academics, and physical development. Pursuing advanced education, Dr. Moore attended the United States Sports University, where he earned his master's in sports medicine and a doctor of education in sport management. His graduate work further solidified his expertise in athletic training, performance, and leadership within sports and education. Dr. Moore later joined the faculty at Tabor College, where he has served for 23 years. During his tenure, he's contributed significantly to the academic and athletic programs, bringing a wealth of knowledge, practical experience to his students. His professional credentials include his EDD in sport management. He's a licensed athletic trainer. He's a certified athletic trainer also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and those are all specialty degrees that take considerable effort. This reflects his deep commitment to excellence in sports medicine and athletic performance, and he has been an extraordinary colleague to work with on a daily basis, and I know our students and our faculty all very much appreciate Dr. Jim Moore. So, would you please help me welcome Dr. Jim Moore?
All right, thank you very much. I'm not athletic anymore. We needed something funny to start out. Get my hands being so sweaty. Thanks a lot for coming. Appreciate it. It's a really neat experience to do this. I enjoy talking in front of the students, of course. It's great to talk about something that has really affected me and my athletic training over the years, the concussions, and look a little bit deeper into this aspect. Really thanks for coming out. Why did I pick this topic? Back in the fall, Coach Gardner approached me and said, we've had several concussions this year. It seems like across campus, really. And it approached me and said, well, Jim, how many hits does it take before you start getting a concussion? And I looked through the Journal of Athletic Training, one of my journals I subscribe to, and didn't find anything substantially answer this question. So that really got me thinking, well, I'll look a little bit further. So I did a little more research and looked at some more things. So most of it's more of a literature review type of thing, where I looked through a lot of literature and a lot of topics about it. But it's kind of an interesting topic, and to see what all the research has been out there over the years, and some things that happened because of it too. Some of the objectives that we want to reach here. The first one, I'll take about half our time, what causes concussions. We'll define concussion, both the concussion and subconcussive thresholds. We'll also talk about some of the things that education, baseline testing tools, equipment, proper instruction can do for you. What can you do when you have these concussions, and also how to recover from them. The last part is going to be return to learn, which I think faculty should be interested in that a little bit, and got some information about that to maybe give some ideas, because it's been very thankful for you, the work that you've done with our students that have suffered concussions and sustained those concussions, to help them through that, especially the academic aspect of it too. A lot of sports can get concussions. Wide range of sports there. Now, not all those necessarily resulted in a concussion, but a lot of sports are involved in this. And it could be with another player, could be with some type of implement or ball, could be with like the floor or the ground or something like that. Side note, one thing that I pulled out, there were 40% less concussions on artificial turf than on grass fields. I thought that's kind of interesting to study that. Turf has less concussions on it, because lots of times there's a lot of things that they say bad about artificial turf, but one of the good things is you don't get quite as many concussions and two from doing it, a little bit less than two. Most of our focus tonight is going to be on football, because that's the one that has a lot of collisions. Soccer we mentioned a little bit too. Those are the two sports we have here at Tabor. Other sports deal with concussions quite a bit, but I'm not going to deal with them as much, but those are the two main ones that we want to talk about. So what is a concussion? A couple definitions up here are listed. The first one talks about having a brain injury. The second one is a mild traumatic brain injury. Pretty serious when you talk about brain injury, isn't it? So pretty serious. Now the first one, if you could see here. Well, the one on the left there is a direct impact. And the one on the right is where the brain is shaking back and forth a little bit, too. So that's kind of interesting. Little visual aid here. A bowl of Jello. Let's say this container is your skull, and the Jello is your brain. What happens when it gets moved a little bit? What's happening inside the skull? The brain's moving, isn't it? I have to be careful here. I got it taped down, but I don't want Jason to If you get hit harder, what happens? The brain moves a lot more. That's what's happening inside your skull. So when these young people, these athletes, and older people too, when they get hit, in the head especially, their head moves around, the brain is moving too. And it's causing some of these problems. This problem is called a contracture injury, where the brain shakes and is injured on the opposite side of the skull of itself. It shakes across there too. But other things happen too. On the cellular level, these neurons, this is a picture of a neuron, they are damaged as well. A lot of the ions that move in and out of there aren't doing it the right way. So it causes the neurons to fire differently. They're not going to be going the same way that they normally go. There's going to be some obstruction with that, some difficulties with that. It's going to be different than it was before. And we have these deformed nerve cells. So we have to get them back to normal. And that requires a lot of ATP. Adenosine triphosphate, that's our energy. That's energy we use in our cells then. And we'll talk about nutrition just a little bit, and we'll give you a reason why nutrition is so important when someone has a concussion to them. But when you have this, what's going to happen to this? I mean, you have two people that run at each other, and one person's head gets hit, and it's shook around a little bit. Well, what do? Well, you have symptoms. Here's a big list of symptoms here that they could be. It's not going to be everyone. It's not going to have all those symptoms. They can have a few of them, several of them. Could be different severity of them too, of these symptoms then as well. This picture here is from the Brain Injury Association. It's a free infographic you can get. I have a couple up here if you're interested. I got one for the Returning to Learn then as well. But it shows a lot of the symptoms that happen from the brain and some things that happen in different parts and why they occur in that area. But you have a lot of symptoms there. So as an athletic trainer, if we think someone has a concussion, what do? Well, we start asking them questions. So lots of times it's going to be self-reported. What did you feel? What did you do? What happened to you? So I might ask, how's your headache? How's your stomach ache? I don't ask them, do you have a headache or stomach ache? I said, how is it? I'm assuming they have one, and then they have to think through it. Well, I don't have one, or I do have one. Oh, it's really bad. So basically to get them to be more truthful in a way. Balance on one leg with your eyes closed. Touch your finger to your nose with your eyes closed. Here's one I want you to try. You're gonna try this with me. We're gonna do a concussion test real quick here. I'm gonna say 5 words, and then I want you to repeat them out loud with me. Okay? Here's 5 words. Jacket, arrow, pepper, cotton, movie. Okay, let's say them together. Jacket, arrow, pepper, cotton, movie. Okay? So that's one. Okay, I'd have them repeat those back to me and see if they can remember that or not. And they wouldn't necessarily have to be in order, but have them see if they can remember it. Maybe check their pupils with eye response. Or have them follow my finger. See how their pupils react and their eyes move as they're going through this too. But what really actually is a concussion? This next slide is kind of interesting because of the range that you have it. It's a threshold of concussion is 70 to 120 Gs. Well, what's a G? Well, 1 G is basically the gravity that you feel in your body. That's what it's talking about. But as you can see, there's different ones listed here. Sneezing is about almost 3 Gs. Getting a good slap on the back is about 4 Gs. Walking on that nice recliner when you get back to relax, about 10 Gs. If you're shaking your head, 10 Gs. Not near enough to be a concussion, all right? But you do that. Roller coasters and thrill rides, they can be 0 to 4, over 4 Gs. So those are some of the numbers that are out there that people may have to deal with. Why is there such a wide range? 70 to 120 Gs for concussions. Well, one of the main reasons is because they're so individualized. It's just, everybody's individualized with that. How many impacts do they have? How many numbers of impacts have they gotten over the season, over their lifetime? How many severity of, how hard were they that they got hit? where it was located. Most impacts are located in the front of your head. Head posture, neck, muscle activation. That's one area that I really think is important to work on. And there's some, we'll talk about that a little later. And visual performance is someone athletic enough that they have some good peripheral vision. They can see someone that's getting ready that they're collide with, or something they're gonna collide with, and they can make their body in such a way that it's tensed up, so it's not gonna be as difficult for them to sustain that hit, or that running into someone. So to determine if someone has a concussion or not, sustained concussion, we need to realize the mode of injury. Did they hit their head pretty hard? Did they get hit? So that's gonna be a key thing. Another thing, well, how many symptoms do they have? I'll go through that list of symptoms. How many symptoms do you have? Those are the two main things that I'm looking at. But also it's good to have some type of other tool to work with. What we have at Tabor, we use a table called Sway, and we'll talk about that a little bit in a few minutes too. But it's something that is important to have. Interesting quote from one paper that I read. Removing a player with a suspected concussion immediately will require less time for recovery than if that athlete continued to play longer than 15 minutes. So if you suspect someone has a concussion, get them out. Check them out. Make sure it's not a concussion before you get them back in. Make sure that they don't have that concussion so that it won't be as long as recovery for them. So check them out then too. Soccer is one of the things that we're dealing with. You can look at some of these G's for different sports. Once again, what's our threshold? 70 to 120 to say it's a concussion. Now we're talking about a lower threshold. These head impacts that we have. What are some of these things that we're dealing with too? So you can see that football many times 22 to 23, up to maybe 50 G's for some collisions. Hockey has almost 20. Heading a soccer ball is 20 G's. So how many heads are there during a soccer game? You can think that through there too. So we're not reaching that threshold. We're not getting that 70 G's with these little bitty hits. Does it matter? Does it have to be concerned? Definitely. Because they can pile up. That's the main focus that I want to talk about this literature review then too. Some ideas here. This is kind of interesting too. Most of these impacts in football specifically happen in preseason, the month of August. That's only about 1/5 of the season. So a lot of the impacts happen at the beginning of the season. And some of these, and then we get into where if it builds up, what's going to happen eventually? And that smaller hit may become more concussive-like. The high school and college football players can have more than 1,000 head impact per season. I just noticed this a little bit ago, that's from 2015. After 2015, I forget exactly the years, 17 or 18, something like that, they started instituting some less practice opportunities. They cut back on contact practices for high schools and colleges, NCAA colleges. And so that's kind of high for what we think right now. But when you think about it, 2020, there's still 47 head impact exposures per preseason practice and 32 during the regular season practice. And so that's quite a few that they're having per practice, these athletes. So they're having these little things that are happening. It's not the 70 G's, might be just the 20 G's, but it's happening 47 times in one practice session. An important thing to think about is your gray matter, your white matter is the one that we want to look at then. So as you look at these head impact exposures, what's happening there? Well, there's a lot of structural, physiological, and cognitive change that I'm doing observed there then too. There's a neuroinflammatory response, happens in the brain. And some of the brain regions of some athletes are altered by these repetitive impacts over time, over the course of the season. No diagnosed concussion, but they're still having these impacts. They're still getting their brain moved around, rocked around inside their skull. This is something that's a little bit beyond what I went into overall, but so some of these words, I want to act like I know what they mean, but I really don't, but we'll say them anyway. And I may pronounce them wrong too. But some of the effects of multiple head impact exposures are similar to a single concussive event. So some of the things that you see as they look at some of these brains and so forth like that, they're similar to having one concussion, but it's not high enough to be considered that. Amyloid, the buildup of amyloid, tau, Lewy bodies, and TDP3. And these are substances that may have relationship to different neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. Those are what you're seeing in some of those things as people age into. But once again, none of the events were considered a concussion. They're looking at pre-concussion type numbers in two. Going on, similar ideas in two. Functional connectivity may be altered, and that Walton did a lot of study with this. And a lot of his studies were inconclusive. They didn't have significance with them. They had a lot of relationships, but they really weren't significant, so I couldn't say it dogmatically that this is what happened. So some of the symptoms are similar to those experiencing cognitive decline. So as you get older, you get forgetful and things like that, but it's being more so at younger ages than for some of these people. He continues on, talks about some things. Most of these are not detectable until they're older though. You don't see these situations, these symptoms show up until someone's older. His main study was with 36 to 41-year-olds. He talked to people who have been in football, played football for at least 1 year of college football, and they're 15 years out of that. So he talked that's who his studies went. And he's finding some of these ideas of someone having dementia and things like that at that age. Some of the symptoms and things like that at that point too. Repetitive head impacts are risk factors for older individuals with mild cognitive impairment and dementia. So as you look at an older population and you look at their history, lots of times you'll find that they had these repetitive head impacts. They had some of this going on in their lives early. This is something that's out there quite a bit, head impact and exposures of aging. And once again, I didn't gear to this as much though, but CTE has quite a bit of research out there. The only problem with CTE is that the person has to pass away before you can look at the brain. They haven't found a way to look at it early. Now, I just read an article today, in fact, just that they found some possibilities that they might be able to see something with some type of their instrumentation. But right now, they have to look at people that have already passed away than to have been deceased. But it's interesting. It's increased 30% for every year of football. Doubled every 2.6 years. And increased more than 10 times every 9 years played. I played 9 years of football. So see what happens in a few years' time. Hopefully nothing. But it doesn't happen to everybody. It doesn't happen to everybody, but it does happen to a percentage of people that we can be concerned about. So repetitive head impact exposure in years played are hypothesized. They think it's happening to correlate to one another. However, another study showed that it was not. It did have some cognitive and psychological help, but really wasn't compared to the two. I just looked up real quickly here. Some names out here: CTE, NFL, Aaron Hernandez, Mike Webster, Junior Sayers as well. There's a Australian rules football player, female, Heather Anderson, that had this as well. So one of the first females that was recognized as having this. And once again, she's passed away. Her brain was donated to a brain bank, and then they studied it that way. Parkinson's, Muhammad Ali, some of you may know that name. He had Parkinson's really bad as he aged, and he thinks a lot of it going with boxing. Alzheimer's, Gordie Howe, hockey player. So once again, a lot of collisions with hockey too. So some of those people develop some of these brain difficulties and also. This is what's kind of scary. The more impacts you have, the more minor impacts you have, they build up over time. So remember that. I'm going with that 70 G's as that's what's going to be a concussion. But now you're finding you've gone through the season, maybe preseason especially, where you have so many more collisions, And then the middle of the season, you have just a minor hit, what would be a normal minor hit, and then you end up with a concussion. They build up. These repetitive head impacts build up over time. And that's what both of these are statements are trying to say there too. Oops. Got to get there. What are those 5 words? Think about it in your mind. How many games? Okay. I jumped the gun there a little bit. Maybe it's all over. The first one was immediate memory. This is delayed memory. You'd say the same thing later on. Now, we'll talk about SCAT 6 in a little bit here too. They use 10 words and not just 5 words to test you. That's how 10 words is more effective than just using the 5 words. So, but how'd you do it? And you didn't have your head shaken. All right. There's a lot of individual difference with this. A lot of individual differences, so a lot of people. So head size and shape can affect strength to the brain through head acceleration. Younger athletes have more tendency to have problems with this, more susceptible to concussions than older athletes. Brain soft tissue properties, once again individualized. Someone who's had a concussion before may be more susceptible to another one. And further read that a little further, someone who had a concussion and hasn't fully recovered from it is more susceptible. If someone's been fully recovered from the concussion, it would be a new event, but it could add up once again. What they found out though, a lot of these athletes that are having concussions are having a lot of head impacts before that concussion. It's building up to that point too. Kind of scary. Well, what do you do about it? Well, there's some positive things that have happened. One study pointed out, once again, we talked about the white matter a little bit and all the problems with the white matter. After about 6 months of rest, no contact, no collisions, no problems with that, the symptoms have subsided. They're not there anymore. They leave. So rest can be a big thing with that. Even when someone has a concussion, part of our protocol is to rest a little bit. Not complete bed rest, but to rest and let the brain rest a little bit then too. But so we're finding, so some of these subconcussive things, they're not seeing those later on. So no one ever got diagnosed with concussion, but as they got tested and looked at, later on, after 6 months with no collisions, they were gone, they were clear, they had a clear brain. It reversed itself, it was able to heal itself then too. All right, big questions. I know you put these little things, I should put the drum roll on this, but this is not anticlimactic for this one. I think you probably already know the answer to this one. Big question mark. I don't know. It's so individualized. It's very individualized that we really don't know yet. And there's a lot of things coming to play with that. And that's me holding my head with the concussion because I went through all this and I didn't find anything. Now, that's a skinny me, and that's been, I don't know if I've ever been a skinny person, so. But that's, we don't really know. But there's a lot of things that tend to show that can happen. Some people can do. Well, what's more important though? What do we do to prevent these concussions from happening in the first place, or having these events in the first place? What are some ways that we can lower it? And that's an important thing. And that's probably where I'm more interested in, is preventing things from happening than having things happen and have to deal with it. And I like prevention quite a bit. I lifeguarded in college, and when I was teaching in Pennsylvania, I lifeguarded quite a bit. I prevented things. I put the rope across so people didn't cross the middle line and didn't go in the deep end when they weren't supposed to. If you weren't supposed to be running the deck, you got yelled at. You're not going to be running on the deck. That's not what you do. Prevent things from happening. And that's one of the things I really want to do, is prevent things from happening. So we want to look at education, baseline testing a little bit, proper training methods, and appropriate equipment then too, different ways. The education is a big part. Education and practice guidelines help lower concussion rates. Several people have looked at that. Coaches who had some training in this were able to reduce concussions in half. And most of this was with the younger ages, under 16 for the most part, but other coaches have benefited from this as well. Prioritize that and limit the amount of full contact time and have reduced amount of head impact risk too. But that makes sense, doesn't it? If you're not colliding as much, and if you're not doing those drills that you run into each other a lot, then you're not gonna have as much head problems, right? The Ivy League limits contact practices, and the number of concussions reduced 81% on kickoffs. And that is a combination of that new kickoff rule that they instituted in college for them. And so they dropped their concussion rate quite a bit by reducing their contact too. Policies that limited contact football in practice saw concussion rate reduced by 64% in some places. Contact during practice is a good way to limit concussions, reducing that too. Here's a problem though. What sports are we playing? Playing football and soccer and hockey, ice hockey's in, the lacrosse would be involved with that quite a bit, rugby and all those things. What do you do in all those sports? You collide with people. You run into people. You head a ball out of the way. So how much do we limit that and still have a safe person? Because someone else is going to be running into you. And you have to know how to protect yourself from that. And know how to brace yourself for that too. So will these restrictions inhibit skill development? Or reduce the team's competitive edge? Since, once again, various sports require full contact. There's a lot of training that takes place in these athletes. And they want to optimize their performance and be the best they can be in those things. And so that's the big question. Where's that balance? Where's that balance? And that's, coaches decide that lots of times. And that can be done very well. But once again, there's a lot of organizations that put rules on it, stipulation on it, where that helps coaches out to make decisions too. All right, let's look at some baseline testing. The first one, military uses this one quite a bit, the Dana one. The next one, the tandem gait test. You notice they walk on the line, but then they're also, they might be counting down from 100 by sevens as they're walking. So they do the exercise plus a cognitive example of it too. Impact, I've seen that used in different colleges and a couple places. The King-Devitt test, it's pretty good for immediate concussion testing too, not just a baseline, but immediate concussion test. It's good to have and just to be able to look at it right away and tell us pretty quickly if it's a concussion or not. SCAT-6, a lot of people like this because it's free. You can get it offline, stuff like that. And it's pretty accurate then too. It's got 6 pages of them. So they do this before they start participating in sports. They have the number, here's the numbers here. The letters. I'm sorry, the words that are here. The 10, they go with 10 words now instead of the 5 that I talked. They used to have a 5, but then they thought 10 would be better. Now it's SCAT 5. So they've really improved this, and they do some studies with this too. So it's fairly lengthy, but gives a lot to do. And then if someone has concussion, or you think they have concussion, you go back and you check this to see what they're compared to, what the baseline was. And that can determine if it's a concussion or not. What we use is Sway. It's a mobile app that we have the students do before they can start playing. And it takes about 20 minutes if everything goes well for them, if their phone doesn't die on or something like that. But then afterwards, if I suspect someone has a concussion, they use my phone, and it takes about 10 minutes to go through it again. They go through the test again, and then it'll show different areas. Those would be their baseline scores, and then it shows me if their baseline score was off, or their new score was off of that. And I can determine, okay, they have a concussion, they don't have a concussion. But once again, we start with symptoms. If their Sway is good and they've got several symptoms, and they use a severity score of 6. So if they have a headache of a 3, their balance is like a 2, their fatigue is a 4, their having problems falling asleep is a 1, something like that. Those are a lot of symptoms that they have a concussion. And lots of times that'll solidify it, or else if it doesn't show that way, then you have too many symptoms. We need to hold you out and we'll talk about return to play, protocol in a little bit too. But that's what we use here at Tabor. Some training methods are important. I mentioned like neck strength and core are very important for us to have. And if you look at the indented point, the football collision, the different values, newtons here, as you collide 3,900, 7,400 newtons, 7,800 newtons there. Neck failure is less than that. So most times if someone has a confirmed concussion, they're gonna have some type of neck problem too. Because that collision that they had is probably greater than what that would cause a neck problem to do. So that comes into play quite a bit then as well. So the focus of strength conditioning neuromuscular stabilization program should be on the flexor musculature of the neck and trunk. So their core, the flexor core, and their neck. That's usually the motion dealing with in sport. So being able to have a strong core and also a strong neck can help out with that too. My video with soccer didn't work, I'm sorry. I'll try it once more, I think Haley, I'm sorry, Haley. Haley demonstrated a header for me, and she did a really good job with it too, but just to show, if you break it down a little bit, to show as she was heading, she reared back, and she leaned forward, and her head was forward too, and contacted the ball on her forehead. And so she kept herself under control, had her neck muscle stabilized, has her core stabilized, to be able to handle the force of the soccer ball. Once again, remember how many G's a soccer ball header is? 20. So every time they're heading, there's 20 G's that's happening with that too. Going on. Different training methods are out there. Using proper tackling techniques in football. Activate your body first, be able to do that. There's helmetless tackling training interventions out there. Maybe using a pad or just using going without a helmet. And if you think about the sport of rugby, if you ever watched that, they don't wear helmets. And they still sustain concussions, but they know how to tackle well too. They know how to get their head out of the way and to do it correctly. So there are ways to do that too. Here's an example of tackling technique without using another individual, just using an implement. Yep. Sure, again, I'll stop it when he gets over the hip, just see his body. Yep. Notice how his head is away from the pads. That's where your head would be away from the body of the person you're tackling to, and use your shoulder quite a bit. And once again, it's not another person he's tackling, he's taking down, it's an object that he's taking down, a softer object, so he's not going to get the same amount of head impact with that thing too. All right, helmets. Helmets are the best thing to wear. That protect the head too. Virginia Tech has their STAR program. That's very good. Current helmets. Noxec is another good organization. That's the one that most people use. It's got to be certified. I brought a couple helmets in. This is the helmet my son used in high school. And if you look at close, look at the inside, it's kind of a bladder type thing in here. Has some room around the jaws and stuff like that. It was a pretty expensive helmet too. We paid for it. He's a quarterback, so we wanted to keep his head straight as much as possible. This is not rated one of the better helmets anymore. And this is probably about 14, 15-year-olds, I think we figured out. So it's an older helmet now. This is what Tabor uses. Now notice the inside. They have a good jaw pads. That's an important thing. Protect the jaws and stuff like that. A lot of good padding up there, too. Has a little extra up here then as well. Talk to Coach Gardner. I mean, he does a good job of getting really quality equipment, protective equipment then too, just to help out with those type of things. The key thing for helmets though was to keep from having skull fractures and hemorrhage, not necessarily stop someone getting a concussion, but to keep it from having a fracture or hemorrhage, and they do that. And this would be on the, I think on the star, that zenith there was really good, but probably on the new star thing is probably about a 2 or a 3, and this one's a 4 or 5. And 4 or 5 is what you want to have. So it's changed a lot over the years as well. And then the other picture there, you've probably seen those a little bit. The Guardian cap has been used a little bit. Not a lot of research with the Guardian cap though. That kind of surprised me as I looked at that a little bit. Not as much research on it as you think. And most of the research has been done with high school kids, and they haven't been very positive. So the Guardian cap isn't known for high school athletes to work very well to prevent concussions. Now, college and professional may be a little bit different because they have a little bit thicker padding on the Guardian cap, and it's more dense. So it may be a little bit different for someone in college and in professional sports. But the Guardian cap is out there. You'll see that a little more. Once again, not a lot of research on those yet. A couple other things, mouth guards. Special mouth guards can be made that reduce concussions by a quarter. So that's quite a bit. Headgear for soccer is beneficial. They tested it also with rugby and with lacrosse, women's lacrosse. Men's lacrosse wears an actual helmet. Women's lacrosse they don't wear helmets, but they found it does work well for soccer. All right, this is kind of interesting. Okay, we got the concussion. Now what do we do? Well, diet is important, and this is something that's near me. I just had a webinar just a couple months ago, and I said, oh man, this would be great for me to look at. The first one, I had to double check on this. I checked my notes again, and I still have questions about it, but to increase your calorie intake 25 to 30 calories per kilogram body weight per day. That's almost, if someone weighs 172 pounds, that's 2,000 calories extra a day. That's a lot of calories in a day. I'm not sure about that one. But I double checked it, and that's what it said. Increase the calories for that. And some of the reason for that, why? ATP. We need that energy to help renew the neurons that we damaged. So that's why we're trying to do that. Increase your protein, 1.7 to 2.4 kilograms per kilocalories per kilogram body weight per day of protein. 1.7, 1.8 is what you need for most athletes per day per kilogram body weight. 2.4 is a little bit higher, but that's not outlandish still really. Omega-3 intake should be 2 to 3 grams per day, 2,000 to 3,000 milligrams. I take 1 fish oil tablet a day. Started doing that again. That's 1,000 milligrams. They're talking about taking 2 or 3 of those a day for someone with concussion. And 20 grams of creatine per day could be beneficial. Creatine used to be a bad thing years ago when I first started in athletic training. Now it's kind of, creatine's not that bad. It's something beneficial for you. So what do you have for protein anyway? Meat, 1 ounce of meat is about 7 grams, so probably that meat with like 3 or 4 ounces, so 20 ounces of grams of protein you have tonight in your meal. An egg would be 6 grams. Cottage cheese, a half cup cottage cheese, 14 grams. Milk is 8 grams. Bread's about 3 grams. 2 tablespoons of peanut butter, 7 grams. A protein shake, protein bar, they can range quite a bit. 20 to 40 grams, pretty normal. Up to 50 grams or so for some of those in as well. The return to play protocol, pretty much it's a graduated protocol we have here at Tabor. They need to be symptom-free for 24 hours. So they may be a week with symptoms before they are symptom-free. But when they're symptom-free, then we can start on the return to play. And it starts out with just walking and a little bit of exercise, jogging and so forth like that. Then do some more exertion, exercise, burpees, sit-ups, a little bit of running then. After they pass that one, they can start doing the weight training again, and then they get the skills and so forth like that. And then by day 5, they should be available to participate full-time. Return to learn, this graphic didn't show up as well. I once got to have some copies up here if you're really interested. I want to talk about a few of them here. But return to learn, and once again, we've had quite a bit of it in the past couple of years, just seems like it though. But let me talk about some of these things, starting with the light green and working our way around. Clockwise here. Dizziness, if they have that symptom. Minimize note taking due to up and down movement of the eyes. Just think about it. If you've ever been at that day, we got kind of dizzy and just gotta keep your head still the whole time. Just think someone's trying to take notes, then move your head up and down. Sensitive to light or noise, use the sunglasses. A lot of students will do that. Fatigue, reduce the time in class. Headache, allow breaks and maybe in a lower stimulus environment in a darker room or something. Slow cognition, increase time to respond to classwork. Slow focus, written directions, more time for homework, work and testing, things like that. All right, my concluding thoughts, there's no threshold for concussion in football, especially the lower impact type of aspect of it. It's not been established yet. And concussions will not be totally eradicated from sports. They're still going to happen. But if we can try and reduce them as much as possible, that'd be great. And then I was just thinking, some observations I've had over the several years I've been around sports and things like that. And maybe some of this stems from not practicing as much so too, especially in football. Poor tackling technique. Maybe the high schools have dropped so much they can't tackle well, or else they've gone to no contact, meaning that I can't do anything. I can't try and tackle one of the stand-up dummies or something like that. Maybe they've gone that far. But poor tackling technique when people get here. Poor control of their body. A lot of people in some of my classes, I'll watch them do a plank, which is a good core exercise, or a back bridge or something like that. And they're not very strong in their core. They can't do it very long. So control of their body. Weak core strength. Not able to prepare for collisions. And probably the third one, that's probably the main one, athletes are bigger, faster, and a lot stronger than they were 15, 20 years ago. They are putting in a lot of force when they do some exercises and when they do some collisions with these people. And that's what we want them to do, to get that way. But it's going to have more effect with collisions too. All right, if you want to check out my references. Okay. Any questions? Any questions? Amy?
Yes, in your experience here, is it more common for an athlete to self-report a concussion, or is it more that you seek out somebody you think has symptoms because nobody wants to sit? So is self-reporting happening, or do you feel like it's more you have to figure out if you need to test them?
Lately, it's been, I think our athletes are more educated in this thing than what we think they are. And they will self-report. Well, come and I can test them and things like that. I've had a couple situations recently that I just thought I had a cold. I just wasn't feeling good. I've been down, I had a cough, something like that. I didn't feel right. And then come find out, okay, you got a concussion. And they kept on playing, which goes back to that 15 minutes more after you keep on playing more than 15 minutes after you had a concussion, it just made them worse. It took them a long time to recover. So I think it's a little bit of both, but mainly I think they do a good job reporting on their own. And if I see it, I can do it as well. And what's going with the sweat is really beneficial. It really helps out quite a bit. Other questions at all? Yes.
I'm interested if you could talk a little bit more about the difference between August and the rest of the season. I can't remember what you said. Is it that they have more concussions actually in August than the rest of the season, or is it just impacts? I'm just wondering of why did your literature talk about sort of, is it just the coaches are having more contact, or is it that the players aren't trained properly yet in August and so they're making lots of tackling mistakes? And I don't know, do they speculate on causes of what's going on there?
You answered a little bit of it too. I mean, players are trying to make the team, especially college players, and they're going to go out and try and hit extra hard and things like that. And some of them, you've got an 18-year-old who gets a 22, 23-year-old. That's a big difference. I mean, in maturity and physical maturity and things like that. So I think that's some of it. But the reason the preseason, well, some days because of 2 days, or even they're trying to get a lot of work in, and so we have practice every day. I mean, when the season starts, Tabor anyway, Monday is pretty much just a weightlifting, watch film day type of thing. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, more contact with it. Friday, you're not doing anything, just walk through. Saturday, game day, and not all the team plays on a Saturday. Sunday's rest day. But during the preseason, you're going Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, get one day off sometime in there. And so I think that's something too, you got a lot more practice going on there than do. But I think a lot as you prepare for the season, you're trying to get a lot more intensity built up and seeing who's gonna play, who's not gonna play. And that's the time for that too.
I just think it's interesting because that kind of runs counter to this idea of building, these minor sort of actions. I would expect the number of concussions to increase as the season goes on, based on that cumulative.
Right, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I think they accumulated right away.
Yeah.
And so that's why it happens. But then an offensive lineman who gets hit every play, is bumping somebody every play. Middle of the season, they have a little bump. It's like, oh man, my head just feels like it's terrible and stuff like that. So, and that built up from probably all those times in preseason, but then also into the regular season too. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
Have you ever seen the movie called Concussion?
I have not seen that. I've always wanted to watch it. They said it's really good to see.
I've seen it, it's so good, I've seen it a handful of times. And then did you see the documentary on one of the gentlemen that you said, it's on Netflix? You said his name.
Yeah,
Yes, Aaron.
Aaron Hernandez, oh yes,
Yeah.
I haven't seen that, no.
Oh, you might like that one
Yeah,
too.
he was with, Patriots, wasn't he?
I don't
I think he was
know.
with the Patriots or something
But it was
like that.
interesting.
Yeah, so, and unfortunately so, I mean, like for the CTE stuff, you have to, you pass away before you can donate the brain for that too. It's not, hopefully they're gonna get that, like I said, I read an article today, it's kinda like, okay, they're getting strides into that, so that'd be interesting to look into also too. Other questions? Yes.
Do the preventive measures that you have for preventing concussion equipment and other stuff like that, does that also reduce the subconcussive impacts significantly, or are they still an ongoing problem?
It's still be an ongoing problem, but it helps. It helps, especially the good helmets, the guarding cap especially is supposed to, but once again, there's been a lot of research with that. I think that'll come around, they'll find out, you'll see a lot more of those around. The NFL wears it, but, okay, they can do a lot of things that the NFL that not necessarily good for you or bad for you. But I think you'll see more of that. Once again, the helmets have improved over the years, and concussions gone down. If you think back years ago, back when I played football, I mean, my face mask, really technique is more than anything. My face mask got smashed most. I had to change my face mask 3 times my senior year in college. Cause I was taught to get with your face mask right in the middle of the chest. That was how you're taught. Now you're not taught that. So hopefully some more teaching techniques will help you with that head impact exposure than maybe the equipment. The equipment's still there and helpful and beneficial, but it's not foolproof yet either. Yes.
Is it possible for the symptoms of a concussion, I know we're talking about sports tonight, but generally speaking, to hide until some point long after the actual event? For instance, my mother was in a car accident when she was like 21 and had no problems, but later on, she suffered a lot of the symptoms of a concussion without having had any impact.
I think that's what the subconcussive type of idea is talking about. There is still some the brain is still affected in some way. Sometimes it can, most times it will repair itself, but sometimes it doesn't. And so maybe that's showing up too, like the CTE type thing, that's something that's caused people to have a lot of mental problems and other emotional problems too with their bodies too. Yeah, so good possibility, yes. Okay, Dave, are you closing in prayers?
I am, yes.
Dave will come on up here. My students in my class, if you didn't sign, there's a sign-up list over there for the points that you want for being here. Thanks a lot for coming.
Good, well, let's thank Jim again for his and thank you all for coming out tonight. Let's close with prayer. Almighty God, we are grateful for the opportunity that we had tonight to share a meal, to learn from the work Jim's been doing on concussions. We thank you for being part of a community that celebrates and honors the life of the mind. We thank you for the gifts that Jim has and that he has brought to this community. And we thank you for the work that he and his colleagues continue to do. Pray all this in the name of your Son, our Savior,